I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your song with the Elevators. The Gonna Be Me, the J5 version that came out. Kind of, how did you guys meet? How did the Elevators come into this, and where did this start?
Yeah, absolutely. They are label mates on our label Ineffable, and we have just kind of been bouncing around some really fun ideas for our new record. Um, our head of the label, Adam Gross, is been working with the Elevators for a bit now, and we all have. I don't know. I think we're in a very collaborative stage in the game right now. And when we were talking about some ideas, the Elevators were at the top of the list, and Adam was able to connect us. I haven't actually met these guys in person, and I've been a fan for a really long time. In fact, we have when we walk out on stage, we use intro music every night, and we've used a song by the Elevators for a couple of years now. And it's just cool that it's finally come full circle where we all know each other through playing with similar bands and being on festivals. And these guys, are somebody we haven't toured with yet, but feel like we know them so well through mutual friends. So it's been a really fun project seeing this come together.
That's awesome. I do know that you guys are in a collaborative state right now, as I was lucky enough to photograph the last two Ocean's Callings.
Awesome.
And yeah, your friends' sets are always one of my favorites. They're surprising and I don't know, just really great. I love it.
Thank you. That's so cool for you to say. It's become one of the highlights of the year for me. I sort of, when we were kind of coming up with the idea, we were like, okay, well, how can we make this, something really unique that we can do year after year and not just do this as like a one-off, kind of, hey, it's the first year at Ocean's Calling, let's, try this out and make it something that is truly, kind of like, something to stick our flag in, that like every year we get to kind of like surprise ourselves while we're working on it. I mean, we're months out from Ocean's Calling, which, is the end of September, and we're already shooting around emails right now for it. And it's, it's only April.
Oh, I know. Me too. I'm pumped for it. It's one of the most unique festivals I've ever gotten to go to. The inclusion of the boardwalk there and the huge Ferris wheel. I took the photos of the Lumineers from the Ferris wheel. I was just like, when will I ever get to experience this again?
Awesome.
Like, it was unbelievable.
No, I think I say this often, but it's almost 30 years into our career, and Ocean's Calling is like the biggest thing we've ever been a part of. And it's just amazing. We're going on year 3. It should be year 4. Unfortunately, we got hit by Hurricane Ian that first year. Yeah. But we've, it's just been so special. We're originally from Maryland. We grew up going to Ocean City during the summers every year. And to now have, this annual tradition, it feels like it's becoming something that like you said, it's unique in that like having the boardwalk be part of it, having the amusement park be inside the grounds, there's just no other festival like it. And the fact that like, it's on the beach. You can show up in, t-shirts and board shorts, or if it's a little cooler, you're wearing, hoodies and jeans. I've been to all the festivals, and as fun as it is to kind of get, dressed up, and as fun as it is to kind of go camp out somewhere in the middle of nowhere for a festival, it's also like really nice just to like have like, just to be so low-key and laid back.
Mm-hmm. And it really does change the whole like vibe of everything, like, because it rained pretty hard that first day last year. You couldn't even tell. People did not care at all. It was so crazy.
They're the best. Everyone is the best. It's just like, let's just embrace it. What are we going to
do? You think after a while going to all of these, you're like, oh, you're going to hear the complaints. It's all good. Not a one.
Nope. Everyone was all in the whole weekend.
It was amazing. It was awesome. Yeah. Very cool.
Thank you. And it's been also really fun too, because one of the things about festivals, like, I see often is you recognize the headliners, and then you're aware of like, who's down in the second and third row. And then there's just endless list of bands that, they're great, but like it just starts to be like, okay, well, is this rock? Is this heavy metal? Are they country? And it's just like, it's very cool to have all of that going on. But we wanted to have a concept, and ours, I think, being able to like, kind of come from our era and also have new and upcoming and people that are blowing up currently, and have it mixed together where every single person that's on the lineup, and have it stacked top to bottom every day is been it's been great feedback from people as well.
Yeah, and even if you don't know the music, you've heard the name, and now you get to see them live, and you're experiencing like
that's the best part of festivals, right?
Yeah. That's how I got into Peach Pit. That's one of the
yes
on my rotation. Like I hadn't seen them before, and yeah, they're awesome. And I know you have some other reggae adjacent bands this year playing, and they're from Maryland. I don't know if you're familiar with Bumpin' Uglies and Ballyhoo, but they're on your lineup. They're Ocean City, and Bumpin' Uglies is actually coming out with a song Friday called Orange Crush.
Cool.
Like, Maryland is just everywhere right now. It's kind of crazy.
That's awesome. All right, Maryland love. We still represent. Originally grew up in Rockville, Maryland. We played, our first show was the 8th grade talent show. We officially formed in high school, and so it's incredible to have that hometown love. And yes, I'm familiar with both of those bands. I like to put together a playlist of music in between, when doors open, and if there's a support act, or between the support act and when we go on. I've always liked to put together a playlist of music just to kind of feel like you're at, a cool backyard barbecue or a pool party or something like that, and consistently throw those bands, on the mix every time.
Oh yeah. That's amazing. How would you say, because you just mentioned high school and 30 years, like how has everything changed, right? That's 3 decades of music you're kind of morphing through. What sticks out to you, or what's been the most exciting or challenging?
Well, the music industry has changed a lot. It's been funny because, we've seen almost every stage in the game. We were, making like dubbing, like high speed dubbing our EP before we even had an album. When you had a cassette deck with 2 players, and you had to play on one and record it on the other, handwritten, put it in a cassette, write up, print out a thing at FedEx as the cover. We were selling cassette tapes out of the trunk of our car in high school. And then to see, the CD era, not that we weren't already in the CD era at that time, but to be ordering, like 1,000 CDs and come up with a sales rep program and give our friends, a box of, hey, here's 25 CDs, try to sell them to your friends. Or if you're going off to college, put it on at a party. Or if you meet the DJ from the college radio station, give them a CD, and it just was this word of mouth thing. And then as we went to college, and we chose the Ohio State University because it was the biggest school in the country and it had a great music scene. And we got there, and we were freshmen in college, and Napster just started taking off. It was this completely coincidental timing, but it allowed our music, to spread before we were ever on a label, before we were, you would hear us, at that time you were finding out bands on MTV, searching through Tower Records or whatever, record store you went to. Even mom and pop shops, had listening stations. And for our music to reach people all across the country, even across the world, at that time, as we were struggling to get up and started at our own college where there was a music scene, and they were like, yeah, not so fast, you know. Like, I'm sorry, who are you guys from out of town? You have no manager, you have no touring history.
Yeah.
Um,
You're pushing
and
these CDs on me.
exactly, exactly. So that's a separate story, and I could share some funny ones for you someday. But while we were sort of trying to get up and running at our own in our own, college town, we were getting phone calls from all over the country. Hey, do you guys want to fly out to University of Arizona or Clemson or Penn State or all of these colleges across the country? Started flying us out to play shows, and soon enough it did start to connect the dots. And this is a long-winded way of saying how the industry and how we have changed and where we kind of came from, because there was so much that sort of led the foundation for what we're still doing here 30 years later. You know, there's the era for us of signing to major labels and having some songs to do, decently well at like mainstream radio. And that opened a lot of things. And then figuring out like a really strategic touring strategy for us to get out there and do this full time, work our way up from bars to, actual clubs and then theaters and now, amphitheaters. So there's a lot of that history of what's changed and what's different. And I think like the best way of saying it is like, we were all friends before we were even in a band. Like we saw Pearl Jam on MTV Unplugged and we were like, we got to start a band. That's it.
That was
And
it.
we just, we have the spirit of like playing in my mom's basement and bringing in all of our different influences. Our guitar player was a huge, listen to The Cure all the time. And our bass player was really big into the Chili Peppers. And I was listening to a lot of like Beastie Boys and East Coast hip hop. And our singer was just getting turned onto like Bob Marley. We had a good friend who would put together mixtapes of all this. I guess so, not as much now because you can find things a lot easier. But at the time, these obscure old Wailers tracks and Bob Marley B-sides and just stuff that wasn't legend, or Kaya or something that was easily to find at any record store. So we were getting turned on to stuff, especially Babylon by Bus, the live album. And
Yep.
like that without a doubt, like was like an inspiration for us to like, it didn't matter what style of music or what genre. It was like, let's find a pulse. Let's find something that the band can kind of just like create a pulse. And whether we lean into more rock stuff or more reggae, islandy influence stuff, it's going to have a similar vibe and feel. And that spirit is something that has kind of like always been with us. And I think to this day, when we write and we sit down, there is something that just feels like O.A.R. because that's innately what we know how to do. And at this point, we're not like saying it out loud. Just like there's no other way to do it. Like
You just are. Yeah.
so like in that sense, like that's where we're still coming from the same spirit, the same style that way. So through 30 years of all of this world changing around us, I just think like when we make music that we want to be making, that's what resonates with other people as well. And I think that's the best way to answer it. I'm sorry if that was long-winded.
No, that's amazing. I love the history of everything and getting those, little details, which actually what made me want to ask, how did you guys come up with Of a Revolution?
So we were toying around in a couple different band configurations in the early days and just trying to kind of figure out like what we wanted to be. We played with a couple different guitar players, a couple different bass players. And when the four of us originally came together and sound clicked, it was less about the songs at the time. It was about the sound. And then we started writing the songs, which obviously it's all about the songs. But I think what was that, light bulb was the sound and the feel of us playing together. So we were like 16 years old, and our singer Mark, who was writing all of the songs and all of the lyrics at the time, was a little uncomfortable writing in like the first person.
Mm.
It just was like, hey, I'm 16 years old. Like, what do I know? Like, I'm not trying to, you know what? Okay.
Yeah,
No.
no.
So, but he was really, really big into, he had read like every Stephen King book on planet Earth. He was also really getting turned on to like Bob Dylan and that storytelling stuff. And so him with an acoustic guitar, it was more of a storytelling style. And so he had written a short story, and there were characters and there were themes in there. And it was all about kind of like figuring out who you wanted to be, and like all of these things of like, mistakes are okay as long as you like learn from them, and figuring out life as what 16-year-olds do. And so he took characters and he took those stories from his short story and started writing songs with them. And we were at band practice one day, and he came down the stairs and he said, "What do you think of the name of a revolution?" And we all just like didn't even like have to like think twice. It was all, yeah, all in. That's awesome. It was a part of a sentence from the short story. And the idea behind it is that there's like dot, 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 which
Mm-hmm.
4 dots for the original 4 members. And we added a period at the end for the dot that we added in college. But at the time, we left that word blank, something only we know what it means. But the revolution was more a musical revolution. It wasn't political. It was, this is the kind of music we've been wanting to make, and we finally have it. So of a revolution, we shortened to O.A.R. It became a little bit of a mouthful. So we, most often are known as O.A.R.
Mm-hmm.
Separate note, was really funny that for years we were known as O.R. because we got mislabeled on Napster and all those other file sharing services as lowercase O.A.R. And so how would people know? And also our song names were everywhere, but what the real song names were, it was like a word from this first sentence or something from the chorus. So for years, we were just known as O.R., which is not wrong or bad or anything like that, but it's just, it was a part of the time,
Which actually, a funny story is about 10, 15 years ago myself, a friend and I were talking. She's like, "Have you heard this band O.A.R.?" No. And she tell me all about it. And I'm like, wow. And then she plays it. And I was like, "Oh my God, you mean O.A.R.?"
Yeah.
And it was just for like a good 20 minutes. We had this conversation that should have been the same, but it was so funny. And so we had a very similar
really
conversation.
bringing me back. How many stories I've heard like just like that. It's been a minute now. I think people know we are O.A.R., but
and again, this was 10, 15 years ago.
I know. And people would be, I don't want to say angry is the word. They knew us as O.A.R. So to say it was O.A.R. was like telling them like that the earth isn't, flat. It was like, wait, I can't process. You are O.A.R.
I have a tattoo of you. You have to be O.A.R.
I know. Exactly. Well, now I have to go get another tattoo with periods in between.
Oh, that's awesome. I don't want to keep you too long, but I wanted to see, what do you guys have for the future? I know you have Ocean's Calling coming up, but new music, anything you can tell me?
Yeah, a lot. So we're playing a ton of festivals and a couple headlining shows this year. We're calling it the Lost Weekend Tour. And so we're spacing out a bunch of these weekend dates throughout the year. In normal years, we have been kind of leaning in towards touring during the summer months. And you can catch us here and there throughout the year. But, we're sort of on this summer touring circuit of playing, outdoor amphitheaters. And then this year we we wanted to pull back slightly from doing an official tour so that we could go really big in 2026, as we talked about, is officially our 30-year anniversary. So it's funny because we were calling this an off year, and I think there's just as many dates on the calendar just spread out throughout the entire year instead of, in a 3-month span. So yes, we have a ton of shows, and festivals are always fun because, we get to see other bands, we get to meet up with friends that, and other bands that we know. It's just a really fun vibe, and we get in front of an audience that doesn't, all know us, like you were talking about, at Ocean's Calling, I've heard of this band, and so,
Yeah.
that still is really, really important to us. We're always trying to reach new audience, and, when you see us live, I think that's the best way to get to know who we are and what we do. And then a ton of new music. We are, more than halfway done recording an album. We've been having so much fun getting in the studio together, writing a few songs, batches at a time, and then having some time to kind of, live with it and work with it. And a lot of collaborations, as you've seen, a few more surprises, coming along with that. And
Can we expect it out this year?
I'd like to say so. We don't have an official date, but we are planning to.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's, all I have for you. I really appreciate you taking the time to come talk to me, and I'm looking forward to Ocean's Calling this year.
Thank you for having me. It was great talking to you, and I got to share some funny stories, that's for sure. It's been a bit some of those. And we'll look forward to seeing you again at Ocean's Calling this year.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you, guys.